Welcome to our Sunday night live chat. Every Sunday, we take a deep dive into learning, exploring how to live an optimal life, how to manifest your full human potential, where I try to answer all your questions as best I can and question all of your answers. So I'd like you to chat in anytime this evening. You need to have a Gmail account to actually chat in, but anybody can watch and listen to the chat tonight. I want to know what you're interested in. I want to know your comments on what we're talking about. I want to know what your opinions are. Maybe what you disagree with me on. That would be great. I would love that. And I want also to remember that you can always not just comment this evening, but this will be recorded and you can watch it throughout the week. And if things come to mind, please comment then. I'm watching my comments all the time. So for this evening's topic, I was listening to National Public Radio, NPR, the other day, and the interviewer was going back to a previous radio interview she had done with the now deceased children's author Maurice Sendak, if you're a parent, or even I guess some of you were kids when he wrote Where the Wild Things Are. And it's definitely one of my granddaughter's favorite books, and I read it to her still quite a bit. And one of the last things that Sendak said when it happened, this actual radio interview apparently was his last live interview at the time before he died. At the end of this radio interview, he said this one phrase, this one sentence, and he said it 3 times. This was sort of his send-off. He said, "Live your life." He said it again, "Live your life. Live your life." That was his final advice to anyone and everyone. That really got me to thinking. So over this last week, I've been kind of mulling that over in my head, and I went home and I wrote it down. He said it 3 times, so I wrote it down 3 times. Live your life, live your life, live your life. And I started playing with that, and I've started saying, if you change the emphasis on each word differently each time, you had 3 different thoughts, 3 different directions to think about that sentence. And so that's what we're going to do with this tonight. We're going to look at that simple sentence, live your life, and we're going to look at it from 3 different views. We're going to put the emphasis on 3 different words in that sentence. So if we look at the first one, live your life. Really emphasizing to live your life. That's the key word. What does that mean? What does that mean, live your life? Well, I thought about it, and I asked my family, and I asked some of my friends and a couple of students, and generally what came up was, that means live your life to the fullest. Get the most out of life you can get. Go for the gusto, this kind of thing. So think for a minute. What does that mean to you? What does it mean to you to live your life to the fullest? How does that look? Does it mean having more stuff or more money, or racking up more and more life experiences? Maybe traveling the world. Maybe having lots of partners, lovers, and not having to work, perhaps. That's living life to the fullest. Or maybe it's all of that. Maybe it's some combination of that kind of thing. Maybe you've got something different. Think about it for a moment. What would it mean to you to live your life to the fullest? And if you happen to be in a place where you can jot some things down or put it into your computer or your cell phone, just jot some notes to yourself. I think this is worthwhile examining, and I don't expect everybody to have all the answers tonight right off the tip of their brain, so to speak, but what does it mean to live your life to the fullest, to live your life? What constitutes really living? I kind of pictured myself sitting back with my feet up on a table or whatever, with my hands behind my head and going, now that's the life. That's the life. Well, what is that? What if you have your maybe close your eyes for a moment and put your feet up. Think about putting your feet up on the table and you got your hands behind your head and you're going, oh, now that's the life. What is the vision in your head? What's the vision in your brain? How did you come to that vision or interpretation? Did you actually create it? Was it given to you or sold to you maybe by your family, advertisers, your culture, maybe your religion even? How did you come up with your idea of that full, wonderful life? Clearly, this last week I did this same exercise for myself, and that's what this whole chat's evolved out of. But I'm asking you this because the way you answer that, because for many, if not most of you, the way you answer that is what's driving your life. That is what's driving your life right now. Your actions, your hopes, your dreams. What's that life you're looking for? What's the essence of that? You need to really examine this. How'd you come up with that paradigm? You know, Aristotle, Greek philosopher, said, the unexamined life is not worth living. Actually, it's on the wall downstairs in the building we're filming from tonight. It's actually on the wall of this office building. The unexamined life is not worth living. And I could also say, someone else has turned the phrase here and said, the unlived life is not worth examining. So maybe that's has some truth to it too. Have you, in reflection, oh, I felt like I was living. I thought I was living. I thought I was in charge of this. I thought I was actualizing everything that was going to give me a full life. But maybe, was I just reacting? Was I just reacting at what everybody else was saying I should want? Something to think about. So in my personal reflection this week, I'll kind of give you an idea of how this evolved for me. I asked myself, when in my life have I felt the most alive? When have I felt the most alive? Now that really started to get me thinking differently. It was a little bit of a judo flip with my brain, because I got away from thinking what was the best life, what was the most comfortable life, or the happiest life, or the whatever, the fullest life. But I started saying, when did I feel the most alive? And I had to look at that. What does that mean? Wow. When did I feel like all the systems were on and I was fully in the game of life, up to my elbows, with a smile on my face? Well, maybe not with a smile all the time, but fully engaged. Here's what I came up with. Some interesting things that came up in my life experience, my reflection. For me, some of the times I felt most alive were those times I felt the most courageous, where I had to work through some fears or some trepidation, some hesitation. I was willing to sacrifice. I found something that I was worthwhile sacrificing something for. Sometimes I was the most committed to a purpose bigger than myself, or in the presence of something bigger than myself, my small version of myself. That's when I felt the most alive. When I felt passionate. When I felt passionate. That's a really interesting word. That's it. We're going to look at that in a second. When I felt passionate about something and I was fully engaged in it, regardless of the outcome and regardless of what other people thought. Now, all the burners were burning, all the jets were firing for me. And that came up in a lot of different ways. It wasn't straightforward. It wasn't just one formula. It wasn't, but I had to look for the common denominator, because I examined my life and I looked at these different times when I felt like this, and they seemed so disparate. They seemed so different. There were up times, there were down times, there were, critical times, there were, blissful times, but they were all had this Venn diagram of commonality. And that was when I felt fully alive, when I felt connected. When I felt connected with someone or like my wife or my children or students or friends, to other people, maybe to people I didn't even know well personally, but I was in a situation, we had a shared experience, and I felt connected. Maybe it was that amazing conversation you had, or those moments just of blissful silence, being with someone you love, or a person or persons, or you're on the same brainwave, where time seems to stand still. That connected. That became that common denominator for me. You know, as I looked at this, the times I felt the most alive were not always the most pleasant times or the most fun. In fact, quite often it was just the opposite. I could be witnessing a birth or a death. I had my share of experience in both. I've had the privilege of talking, and others, actually just recently, a friend of mine, actually one of my students, just lost his father. We had a bit of a conversation on this. These moments of deep connection to that grit, that essence of living. I was in the delivery room when my son was born, and I cut the umbilical cord. Amazing experience. Years ago, when my dad was dying of cancer at home, I was there holding his hand, and I witnessed his last breath. And during those last moments of my dad's life, those last breaths, it flashed in my mind. I had ushered into life one generation, my son. I was a witness to that. And I ushered out another generation, my dad. I saw my place in the connectedness. I saw my place in this flow of life. I felt fully alive and connected in a way that I had probably never had before. And it was both in the joy and the pain of life. I realized that connectedness is what we only maybe connect organically in those kinds of moments, those moments of just raw living and raw dying, that we get away from the goofiness that's out there, some of the silliness that we think is important, and we are fully alive. We are living your life. You are living your life. Living. Sometimes that means us connecting with dying. Because you can't truly live unless you really come to some sort of grip with dying. That's my opinion. The word that comes to mind here is compassion. And compassion means to suffer with. It comes from Latin. But we even strip this down to the word passion. Passion, passion, comes from Latin meaning to suffer. Yet we apply this to all the wonder of life, whether it's a love affair or it's a cause or it's experiencing pain or dying. We call this passion. We have this field of being raw and alive. Passion is the hallmark to me of living fully. My uncle, who's now deceased, for about 20 years, he wasn't speaking to my grandfather. I don't even know what, they probably forgot why they were fighting. I'll suspect some of you listening have similar family dynamics. This just came to mind just now as I was just thinking about this, living and dying, and they disconnected. They were connected at a level that there was regret, there was resentment, there was a lot of things going on there. This happened when I was in high school, but my grandfather died with them not speaking, and my uncle was devastated. Devastated. He missed that opportunity to connect. A number of years ago, I worked as a hospice volunteer. I was an 11th hour volunteer, and some of you may know what that is. It's 11th hour, or they call it transitions now, where you keep vigil, more or less, you keep company with those who are about ready to die, probably within the next 24 or 48 hours or so. People who don't have families, or the families need some respite from keeping vigil. So you go and you stay time with them, and I spend time with them, and I did this for about 6 years, and so I had the honor, the privilege of witnessing, being there for a number of people, basically strangers to me, who were passing. Some of them were cognizant enough to talk, and some weren't. But it was very interesting. One of the things I came away from this experience with was realizing, from their own words, that many, if not most people on their deathbed or coming close to that, they don't regret so much what they've done. They regret what they haven't done. And one of the biggest categories in their lives that they regretted was not saying I'm sorry, not maintaining a connection with loved ones or friends, not bringing closure to issues. They're going to their death disconnected. And that was their hell right then. And I go back and think about my uncle and my grandfather, and there was an opportunity lost. So this idea of being connected to others, being connected to yourself, being connected in other ways. Just something just else comes to mind is that I'm working with some veterans right now. I spent 11 years in the Army myself, and been around a lot of guys, and some women too, of course, who had been immersed in the horror of combat. Yet, in so many words, in so many ways, I've heard from so many that those moments of being immersed in that horror, these folks felt the most alive that they'd ever been. They were connected with what was really important. All the BS that we think is important in life falls away. All that matters is your buddy next to you and staying alive. And I think that this informs me, it teaches me what's important, this connectedness to each other. Other times that I felt in that same sort of living, I was really living my life, being in nature and feeling in the flow, feeling a sense of awe. Whether it's a sunset here on the beach, which been trying to make the beach sunset a number of nights a week. I've been fortunate, my wife and I have been able to do that. Every night's a little different. Every night it's awe-inspiring. You can't get tired of it. I can't. Maybe it's that mountain range that the immensity of it. And it's not just looking at a picture and saying that's a beautiful picture. It's being in it, in that beauty, and knowing that you're not just a tourist. You're a participant. You are connected and deeply and intrinsically in that living nature. It is we're part of the picture. We're in that picture. You're connected to something bigger than that small version of ourselves. We get so lost in that small stuff. And I'm using this word feeling. This idea of feeling connected. It's not an emotional feeling that I'm looking at. It's sometimes the mind and the emotions process this, but this is not a feeling of connected. It's an experience of connected. Sometimes words don't even work for it. Being fully connected to yourself, to others, to something bigger than yourself. The more connected you are, the more you feel alive. It's not so much a state of feeling, it's a state of being. I use these words feeling, but if you are connected and you are in the moment of that, it goes beyond trivial just feeling. It isn't happy or sad. I can have that same level of connectedness and oneness and communion in a moment of death or a moment of birth. One seems happy, one seems sad if you look at just plain feelings. But there's a common field of experience there, a common field of awareness and consciousness that throws you into the essence of life. Another quotation that came to me that just to now is Mahatma Gandhi said, "To find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others." Talk about that. That is all about being connected. Get out of my small version of me, get out of my small problems, get out of my head, and get into life. So connecting to others, connecting even to nature, starting to feel part of something bigger. There's this level of being connected to ourselves. And that seems kind of, might feel a little kind of like holding Jell-O in your hands and slips through your fingers. So what comes to mind to me is this number of things I've read over the years. I've actually had the privilege just recently to talk to a couple of people who've had, I would say, authentic near-death experiences. And a common theme that seems to come out of these near-death experiences is this sense of knowing. These people, they've come away from this and they know, they come back and they know in a very intrinsic and a very deep and subtle way, in that level of consciousness, that who they truly are doesn't die. When they die, when the body dies, they go on. They've had this experience and they've had this experience that resonated deeply. And they know that this isn't all there is. They often describe the aftermath of those near-death experiences. From that time on, they felt they were more alive than they'd ever been before. They felt they were more in tune, more in flow than they ever had been before. I think what we're talking about here, I say I know this, I strongly intuit that they're talking about being connected to that field of awareness, that field of consciousness that we talk about when I teach the path process, which is a meditation process. I teach on this channel and in a variety of other live classes and what have you. And we talk about connecting with that part of ourselves we call the authentic self, or I call it sometimes the objective observer. That part of us that perspective, that we shift a perspective where we sit there and we can observe the workings of our minds, the workings of our emotions, and we can look at ourselves objectively. And when we have this capability that many meditation processes teach, but I teach it in the path, which, by the way, you can go back to any of the videos here on this channel after the chat tonight and revisit the path videos. They're there for you. And you can also go to my web page, warnerhealingguidance.com, and you can give me your email address, and I'll send you a printed version of, you'll get it via email, of the 4-step path. But the point is that in connecting with yourself, this field of consciousness, the authentic self, who we truly are, that's the same, that connecting without having a near-death experience, but in this meditative process, we can make that same kind of connection. And when we do that, I call that a near life experience, to compare and contrast it to the near death experience. One was consciously on purpose. Another was this horrendous, almost dying experience. But both of them throw us into a field of awareness, just like a blissful moment or a moment of death or despair. They throw us into a field of common experience, of common awareness of the self, of who we truly are. And these near-death and near-life experiences bring us to where we are fully alive. That is living. We need to be fully alive. And to connect, these sometimes extreme circumstances can throw us into this field of awareness. We can do it intentionally as well. We can do it on purpose. We can use a process like the 4-step path. The only way you can try too hard, I had a question someone asked me a while back about, do you need to be intentional? Do I need to intentionally connect? You need to be open to connect. We have avenues. We can have a practice, a deliberate practice, a meditation type practice, as I mentioned, the path. We can let the circumstances of life perhaps throw us into these. But we can also begin a process of getting better at being open. The 4-step path, this process is not just a formula to connect you to the self. It helps you open yourself. It helps loosen the distortions of our thoughts and emotions. It opens us and leaves us open, so that as life evolves around us and through us, we're open to those experiences. We recognize them. We don't filter them out. We embrace the passion of life. We embrace passion. We're open to loving. We haven't closed ourselves off to feeling. And it's a letting go. It's a letting go and leaving open. Letting go and leaving ourselves open to live life with eyes wide open. So what holds us back? What holds us back? How come we're not doing it? Do you feel like you're living your life to the fullest right now? I'm going to ask you, think about it for just a second. Are you living your life to the fullest? Now, this is something I want you to take with you for the next week or so, or however long it takes you. Maybe this is a contemplation for the rest of your life. And if you're not, even if you can't put your finger on it right away, I want you to think about what do you feel, not just what do you think, but what do you feel is your greatest obstacle to living your life, whatever that means to you. What's holding me back from living, from being fully in the game, intentionally, or being open to what life presents me? What closes me up? What causes me to become less engaged, less in the game? As I thought about this in my own life, the one word came up: fear. Fear. In all of its manifestations, fear was that, I think, I'm going to speak for myself, fear was, and probably to some extent to the end of my life, we all will have some elements of fear. I'm not talking about the healthy fear of, a rattlesnake is in front of you and you have a healthy fear of getting bitten. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these chronic states of fear that hold us back. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of rejection, fear of responsibility, fear of being hurt, fear of hurting others, fear of being poor, or what people will say about us. And it goes on and on and on and on. Are we holding ourselves back? Are you holding yourself back from really living your life because you're afraid of what people are going to think? You're afraid of what their public opinion will be of you, what your family will think, and what your friends will think. I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can be successful. I don't want to fail. I'm afraid I might be successful. I don't know how that would change my life. That's a big one. That is, ironically, I think in so many people I know, that being successful is more scary than failing, because it causes people sometimes to redefine who they think they are. So where does that bring me? In order, I believe, and this is working from my experience. Let's see if it makes sense to you. I think, for me, one of the biggest things to understand is that to live fully, it takes courage. Courage. Interesting word, courage. Like passion, courage comes from the Latin again, and through the French, cœur, heart. It's the heart that we're talking about. We're talking about the authentic self has been likened to the heart. It's the heart knowing, the heart level of understanding, of connecting. Courage is not an intellectual event. Courage is not an intellectual event. Courage is a matter of the heart, of a letting go and connecting with what needs to be done. And how did you come to that knowledge of what needs to be done? What is the right action? What's the right thing to do? You opened yourself, you connected with that authentic self. Life is an act of courage. Oh. Ask any woman who's given birth. Ask anyone who's raised children, lost children. Ask anyone who's in a relationship. Ask anyone who's picked up the banner for a cause. Life is about courage. This is a little bit of a lengthy quotation, but I think it's really important. I know some of you may be familiar with it all, and it's one of my favorite. I shared this with Rob, my producer, a while back, and we kind of hit us both at the right time. We needed to hear this. It's from Theodore Roosevelt, former president of the United States. If I'm challenging your American history, Google it. But bear with me. I'm going to read this. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man or woman who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, that's that passion, the great devotions, who spends himself or herself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he or she fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his or her place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. This is recorded. Go back to that, not because of the way I read it, but because I think that's a stirring quotation for me. To be in the game, to be fully alive, regardless of victory or defeat, that's what it's about. That courage, the courage to live life and to be open to all of life, not just the comfortable, but the uncomfortable, to make those connections. That heart-knowing place. This is where courage comes from. It's where passion comes from. It's where inspiration comes from, and it's where wisdom comes from. We have to open the heart, access the authentic self. That's the platform to really live your life. That's my opinion. That's the conclusion I came to for my own life. So what if we took that sentence, live your life, and we put the emphasis on another word? What if we put the emphasis on the word your? What if you said live your life? That changes things. I think it does. Becomes, well, what does that mean? To live your life, as opposed to what? Are you living a life of your own choosing? Or are you living someone else's dream? You live in someone else's paradigm. How did you come to be doing what you're doing? In all aspects of your life. I'm not just talking about the job you do. I'm talking about how did you come to be in just where you are in life? How did you choose the life you're living now? Your job, your partner, where to live, what you like, what you don't like, what you approve of, what you don't approve of, what you believe in spiritually or religiously, or what you don't have any beliefs. How did you come to all that? Did you go out and find it? Some of you did. Many of you did. Some of you didn't. Am I leading my life? Or have I been just spoon-fed my life? Are you living a fulfilling life? Are you content? Are you just going through the motions? Sometimes we think we have a very fulfilling life because we're going through the motions and we've somehow gotten really rewarded. You know, we did all the right things. We got the right jobs. We got the right partners, and it looks great. But there's something nagging at us, and we don't feel okay. Something's off. Something is just not aligned. I'm not flowing. I'm not in a flow. What do I do with that? Everybody's telling me I've got a great life and it's not great. I'm not feeling great. I don't feel okay. Everyone else is saying it's okay. No, it's not. Why not? Is it because you've outsourced your life? All this talk about outsourcing jobs. I think most of us at some point have outsourced our life. Yeah, you grow up and your parents and your culture and everybody tells you, your school and your education tells you what to believe, what to think, and they try to give you some skills. But are we really being trained? Are we being taught? Are children being taught how to think, how to self-examine? No, they're not. Not many. How to make those choices, how to connect with the self, how to listen to the voice of intuition, of that truth, that wisdom, that discernment in their own awareness, their own consciousness, to make the decisions. No, we're not training that. Joseph Campbell, who's unfortunately one of my favorite authors and thinkers, and he's a mythologist, and many of you know him if you're familiar with him from The Power of Myth. And one of my favorite lines, I've used this in classes, is that these are his words, there's perhaps nothing worse than reaching the top of the ladder, and I say the ladder of success, and discovering that you're on the wrong wall. It's really hard to change walls when you're at the top of the ladder. You either have to fall down or you have to come down and try all over again. How did you choose what wall to put your ladder up? Are you living your life? Campbell also talked about this idea of follow your bliss. And funny about this isn't just about what makes you happy. Not happy like, oh, this is fun. But what makes you feel connected? Are you following what makes you feel connected at a gut level, at an intrinsic level, that fulfills you, that brings you contentment? Does it bring you into a sense of flow where you feel things are okay? The whole world can fall down around you. You can be in the middle of chaos, but you're in a place of connectedness and flow where you know that what you're doing. I'm moving in the direction I need to. I'm making decisions, and they're authentic decisions. So I'm asking you to examine what you do. Just do the Aristotle thing. Examine your life. Make it worth living. Examine it. Using the path process is probably the best way I can offer you. to learn how to examine these things, how to look at yourself objectively and go through and assess what's in your way. What is in the way of me living my life? So much of our lives, our choices come from outsourcing our opinions, our beliefs. I mean, we're inundated with marketing. Marketing's all about that. Letting other people tell us what's important, what we should believe, what I should be looking at, what should I be paying attention to. The self, the authentic self, the objective observer, that level of consciousness within you is the true source. It's really the only true source of accessing not only compassion, but the wisdom and discernment to know what's important and how to make these life decisions. It's your intuitive inner guide. This is the message I have, that these different concepts come up. Where do we go for answers? The teacher doesn't have the answer for you. The teacher can only give you the tools to find your own answers. But I'm asking you to question where you are and how you got here. And it's not a digression, but it brings me into this word that I think a lot of you, probably my audience tonight, is very familiar with this word of dharma. Dharma, that's D-H-A-R-M-A, and it's a Sanskrit word, and it comes to us actually originally from yoga. Buddhism uses it, but it comes into this, it really becomes really pertinent to this conversation of living our lives. And how do we know if we're in the, how do we get into this flow? How do we truly live our lives? And how do we know we're living our life? So this idea of dharma, it has three levels of meaning, or three shades of meaning, if you will. I'm just going to go with this for a second. You'll see how this builds. So you have this concept, this universal dharma. It's the flow of the universe. It's the way things are ordered. There's a flow. We have our human dharma. We start to bring this really kind of into our lives. Our human dharma. We all share a common purpose, a common mission, if you will, as humans. Humans this is your group thing. Whatever you do in your daily lives, this is a human thing you need to be working towards, and that's to stay in the flow of the larger universal dharma. It's eliminating those obstacles in your life that are keeping you out of balance, out of the flow, out of that connectedness, out of that contentment, out of those chronic imbalances of fear and resentment and what have you, anxiety. So you could say we're dying to those parts of us that are not us. Or you can flip it around and say we're killing those parts of us that are not us, they're in our way. They're getting in the way of me being in a flow. We talked about fear as being a huge one. Then we scale it down to you as a person, because see, dharma has in our common day-to-day use of dharma. Most people I ask, what's dharma? Oh, that's how I choose what to do what I'm going to do when I grow up. What's my career going to be? That's my dharma. Sometimes, probably most of the time, dharma has little to do with what job you're doing, how you make money. But dharma is you taking your life circumstances, the skills, the tools, your talents, your abilities. Sometimes it's the struggle you're in. Sometimes it's the pain that you're in. Sometimes it's the disease you're fighting. This is what you have to work out. How do I use this? How do I leverage this to help me stay in the flow? What do I learn from what I have right now? How do I take my life, my experiences, and stay in that flow of connectedness? Sometimes a hardship is our best path to compassion, to passion. As I said, being there with someone who's dying, being there with my father who's dying, threw me into that field of awareness, of being fully alive. Sometimes the person who's too comfortable doesn't have that gift. They're in a state of gray, of numbness. So your personal dharma is, how do I take what I have right now, what I have, what appears to be a lack or what appears to be a surfeit of whatever I have, and how do I leverage this to be connected, to live my life and reach that connecting with the authentic self. We all have different things. We have different ways of doing this. That may or may not end up being your job. One person may do it through being an artist, another person by being an accountant, another person by having a family, another person by being single, another person may do it by writing books, and another, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We all have a different path, but we have a human dharma. We have a common mission as humans to reach our full human potential. Remember, the beginning of the channel tonight, I said, at the beginning of the chat, what's this whole thing about? It's exploring human potential. How do we get there? So this is what we're talking about. The last way to read that sentence, the last way I'm going to approach that sentence, live your life, is every word gets the same emphasis. Live your life. Live your life. Yeah, just that. Live your life. Well, what does that mean? Sounds kind of boring. All that drama a minute ago, Doug, with live your life and live your life. All this drama. What happens? Live your life? Actually, this may be the deepest one, the most subtle. Live your life. Now, to me, that means stop looking for meaning in your life. Not the meaning of life. Looking for meaning or purpose in your life is a little different than what's the meaning of my life? What's the meaning of life? Then we get all wrapped up in this intellectual go nowhere game, and it becomes an intellectual debate. And people have written billions of books on this, and people have started religions on this, and people have started philosophies on this, and other people have said no. Instead of focusing on the meaning of life, focus on being fully in the experience of life. That's what we really yearn for. If you intellectually could come up with the perfect sentence that said, that describes the meaning of life, I think really well. It's a shadow at best, an incomplete shadow of the experience of being fully in the game, being in the game of life. Don't sit back and think about what life's about. Get in the game and understand, intuit what life's about. That's living life. Worrying about the meaning of life is relying on the relatively short-mindedness of the ego self, the mind, the intellect. Whereas the experience of life, being in that experience of life, comes from the wisdom of the authentic self, the observer. What's the meaning of a flower? Of a mountain? Of rain? Well, don't tell me what they are. Don't tell me what they do. What's the meaning? It's nonsensical. As well it should be. The meaning of a flower is this. You can't answer it. You're asking the wrong question. The same thing with life. What's the meaning of life? You're asking the wrong question. It tells me nothing of the essence, the texture of life, any more than it tells me what the texture of that flower is. The mind, the intellect, searches for meanings. The heart searches for communion. I'm going to say it again. The mind searches for meaning. Incomplete. The heart searches for communion, the experience of connection. That communion is living your life. It's living your life. It's living your life. Living your life. Simply show up. Be present. Be right there, right then. I'm fully in the moment. I am fully on. I'm not worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm not worrying about what happened yesterday. Can I be fully in the moment? That's living your life. That's not as easy as, it's easy for me to say here on this chat, but We all know, I think most of you I'm speaking to tonight know that that's not an easy practice. Most of our mind wants to get us all trailed off to thinking about the future, anticipating the future, regretting the past, and not being in the present moment. But these practices, meditation practices, the 4-step path, they're pointing to your launching pad for being in life, for really being present, is learning how to be in the present moment, in the now, the internal now. Pay attention. Wake up to what is happening right this moment. The path is just for that. That's what it's designed for. Kind of reminds me, some of you, I think many of you are familiar with the late Wayne Dyer. He's one of the self-help gurus. And he wrote a lot of books. He was very popular, and I think the world of his stuff. I've read a lot of his work, and he passed away not that long ago. But he took just as I took this sentence, live your life, he took this simple little rhyme or song and played with the emphasis on the words. Row, row, row your boat. He said, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, merrily, merrily. Life is but a dream. That's not earth-shaking, but when I heard that the first time, I thought, oh, you just took a little nursery rhyme and turned it around to something pretty profound. Row your boat and do it gently, happily, with joy, merrily. It's not always fun. Waking up and being present and living life and living your life may not be fun. As I said, we went back to, I'm thinking of these combat veterans who, some of them, are pretty damaged psychologically with PTSD and what have you, and some of the guys I work with. But I'll tell you, when I hear them and they talk about their camaraderie, they talk about these extreme circumstances they were in, they can't help but say, I felt so alive. And I think part of it, and I'm not a psychologist, but part of the disconnect when they come back home is that, as horrific as what they experienced was, they were thrown into a field of essential living, of connectedness. It wasn't fun. Sometimes, many times, being awake to your life is not, in quotes, fun. It's not Disneyland. We're not being entertained. It may not even be pleasant in a sensory way, but it's real. It's raw. It's essential. It's visceral. I'm trying to come up with the right words, but it may not be fun. We've been sold a bill of goods that for life to be the fullest, it has to be fun all the time. And that's just crap. That's one-dimensional, maybe two-dimensional. It's a cartoon character. It's a stick figure on a piece of paper. It's not a three-dimensional human being. Three-dimensional human being is all of those things. It's the fun, if you will. It's the pain, because there is no pleasure without pain. There is no pleasure without pain. We work in this field of these things. It was interesting. I was thinking about the Greek gods who are immortal were said by the Greeks to envy man. And why? Well, for the Greek gods who lived through eternity, every day was the same. There was no end. It was just one humdrum, monotonous day after another. And so they had to come up with all sorts of bizarre ways to entertain themselves, usually somehow to the detriment of people. But the point is that they envied man because humans live short lives. And because they knew they lived a short life, every single day was precious. Every single day was an exercise, or should be an exercise, in drawing the nectar out of life. If that pain is there, that life pain, you're alive. You know you're alive. I was listening, it just came to my mind. I was just listening to an interview this morning. I was driving to a class, and it was a recording of an interview that with a veteran, a Vietnam veteran. She was a nurse, and this veteran nurse had been in Vietnam and talking about, and she became she was a psychologist at this point, I believe, and she was talking about this high suicide rate with veterans currently, and she was talking about she had gone through PTSD in her recovery, which led her to her career. But in her recovery, she went to her therapist and she said, I don't feel like I'm making any progress. I'm in tears all the time. And the therapist said to her, good. Does it mean good? She said, because you're crying. You are able to see yourself. You're able to get it out. You're able to grieve for yourself. She said it was the people who didn't cry, who were zoned, who were numb, that they weren't connected. They weren't connected to themselves. They weren't connected to all of the things they needed to work on. But that ability to cry was a sign of life, proof of life. I thought that was powerful to realize that I'm suffering, I'm crying, but it means I've connected and I'm dealing with this. I'm in this struggle of life, and I'm not checked out. No, it's not fun all the time, but it's fulfilling. It's where we get contentment. We may be in physical pain, we may have other things, but can we really realize that I'm in this? I'm in this human experience, and I'm present for it. I'm not waiting for the next ride. I'm not waiting for the next buzz. I'm not waiting for the next toy that comes out on Amazon. I'm in the game of life. Live your life. It's all how you look at it. Gave you a lot of things to think about. I would really appreciate and feel honored if during this next week or any time you took some of the things that I discussed with you this evening and just give me some feedback. Go to the recording of this video. This chat should be up tomorrow morning. Go back if you need to re-listen to parts of it, the whole thing. Please share this with other people. Discuss it. Give me what your thoughts. This helps me. I'm here to talk about things that are important to you. I'm not just doing this to hear myself ramble on. I'm throwing out some bait. I want to know what you're interested in. What is it you need to know about? What do you want to discuss? What do you think about this? What we've done tonight? We're getting really close to being out of time. I want to thank you so much for joining me this evening. As I said, this video tonight, this chat will be recorded. It's going to be on our channel till the end of time. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Those subscriptions to the channel, not just having a Gmail account, but subscribing to the channel helps us build some YouTube juice, which helps us keep this thing rolling, keeps this channel going. So please do that. Also, if you haven't gone to my webpage, warnerhealingguidance.com, please do that. I'd really like to get you on my email list. I do send out blogs, and I do have reserved content, video content, and some other things for just folks who come to my email list. So I don't inundate you with a bunch of stuff. It's not emails out the ears and nose. And I'd like you to join me again next week, same time, same channel. Please invite others to watch. This isn't a bad thing to do, is to get 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 10 people, 100 people in your house, if you got a big house, and maybe watch this with some other folks, or at least watch the recording. It might give you some food for discussion. Again, thank you, and have a wonderful week. And until we meet again, Good night.